how to go beyond surface learning. Let's just get right into this video. So surface learning is essentially just learning at a very surface level. In this video, we're trying to really get to a deep understanding of life, right? That means relationships, that means career, that means psychology, that means spirituality, that means science. That means we're having this deep integrative sort of approach. And through this more holistic, integrative approach, we begin to get the depth that we really need in order to simply make sense of life in a very accurate way and begin to navigate it very well. Because life is this very complex sort of thing with all these different domains. And all these different domains, whether it's career, relationships, your own health, spirituality, etc., all this stuff really begins to connect. And without having a really good map of all this stuff, right? The map I'm talking about is your mind. Your mind is always mapping out reality. Without having a good map of what it is and how it works, etc., it's hard to navigate it. Imagine if you're in the Amazon and you don't have a map, right? You're going to get lost. You don't know what's poisonous and what's not poisonous. You don't know where it's safe and not safe. Odds are you'll die simply because you don't know how to navigate it well and get your needs met and avoid danger. So the first point that I have here is active learning. Really just proactively learning every single day, dedicating some time, energy, and attention to learning. This means also spending your money on the things that are actually going to help you to develop yourself and learn. This doesn't mean spending money every day, just to, just at that point, so you're clear. But this means that you're not afraid to spend money on the things that are actually going to help you to learn, like books or a seminar or whatever it is, right? You can use your money as a tool to gain access to the things that are going to really help you in your life. So maybe that means reading books, maybe that means whatever, going to a retreat of some kind. Moving on is after you really start to get a bigger picture view of life, which I'll be talking a little bit about this later on in the video, right? After you begin to get this bigger picture view and synthesize information, you're going to notice a lot of common trends within a lot of different information. You'll notice a lot of similarities. You'll notice a lot of patterns. You're going to notice that there's just simply a lot of connections that can be made. So you want to relate new information to a lot of things that you've previously learned. And you want to build this ability to just connect concepts so that everything is more holistic and essentially whole and integrated rather than being fragmented and separated and too distant from one another. You want to kind of bridge gaps between different topics like psychology and spirituality, or politics and psychology as well, between relationships and career, right? Between health and X, between Y and Z, right? You want to start bridging all these kinds of gaps. You want to realize everything is very, very interconnected. Moving on to my third point here is use multiple learning modalities, meaning that find out how your own mind works, right? How does it learn the best? And do a lot of that. And again, I'd recommend integrating a lot of different approaches, ideally. Maybe that means reading, listening, watching, or doing. But I'd recommend really integrating a lot of different approaches because each approach is going to have different forms of value. Visual will have different value from auditory. Auditory will have different value from kinesthetic, right? So it's like you kind of want to taste a lot of this stuff. And the things that work the best with you, right? You want to be able to kind of recognize that and stick with it. But you really don't want to just throw one away. For example, reading books, right? That doesn't sound very entertaining. A lot of people don't do it. But the level of depth that you get from reading books is practically unmatched. You're not going to find the level of depth anywhere else, really. So you don't want to throw that one out, right? You want to really care about depth here, right? I'm maybe biased because I've read a lot of books, but again, even after you read the books, you got to test the ideas, which I'll be talking about later on in this video. Now I want to get into today's sponsor of this video. I was fortunate enough to be sponsored by Shortform. It's really an honor because I use this platform to really begin to deepen a lot of insights that I have and actually just connect a lot of information to other forms of information. So Shortform basically takes books and summarizes them. It outlines a lot of the core concepts within those books in a highly organized way. And I essentially just use it to potentially review information that I'm interested in or just like explore my curiosity. I'm a massive researcher, as you can tell, so anything that involves just having a lot of information that I can kind of dive into freely, I really love it. Shortform has a lot of different genres as well. They have career, philosophy, spirituality, psychology, relationships, etc. And I want to give you a very practical example from my life on how it actually helped me. So I was reading this book, where is it over here? The Divided Mind by John Sarno. Right? I was reading this book a very long time ago, and I was going through some of my notes the other day in my journal. And I noticed that it was on Shortform, and I decided to just kind of start connecting a lot of these ideas. I started to just connect some of the points that they had on Shortform with the points I had in my journal, just because I find it rewarding. This is just something that I really love to do. Shortform basically drops and publishes new book guides and articles every week, and subscribers get to vote on what books to cover. And it's constantly adding new features, basically across every medium out there. It's quite powerful. So Shortform is not a replacement for reading books. I want to make this very clear. Shortform basically takes the book and it summarizes it, and it really outlines a lot of those core concepts. You're not going to get the level of depth that you really need from actually just sitting down with the book and just reading it from front to back from Shortform. But it's kind of like this cherry on top, right? If you have your dessert and you have your sundae and you got the little cherry on top, Shortform is kind of like that cherry on top. So for me personally, I read the book, I do a lot of writing as well. I'm writing in my notes constantly. And then the Shortform guides are kind of like this bonus. It's just like this like plus one that, that I really like. So you can go to my link, shortform.com/Lucas, to try it out for free and get a 20% discount on your annual subscription. Moving on, every single piece of knowledge that you get and that you're really trying to integrate into your worldview, you have to actually apply it. So really take what you're learning and apply it to real world situations. Apply it to your actual life. Test ideas against experience. And when ideas habitually do not line up with experience is proving them wrong again and again and again and again. Right? They're just not lining up. It's not working whatsoever. That's typically an indicator that it's false. That's typically an indicator that, okay, you got to let go of it, try something else. You're kind of taking this like scientist approach, right? And you're just like experimenting with the ideas. And when things like habitually stick to experience, right? And they only get deeper over time, that just means that there's something very true about that particular idea. There's some deep nugget of wisdom within that idea. So moving on to number 5 is critical thinking. And critical thinking, we kind of hear about it. It's kind of corny to just be like, oh, you should think critically. But really, what I really mean here by critical thinking is having an ability to just simply ask deeper questions. You really want to just explore alternate perspectives, challenge assumptions, and even just analyzing a lot of the sort of fundamental aspects that give rise to a particular perspective, like the core concepts or the core principles. Essentially, you're trying to get into the mechanics of what is really going on. Why, how, you really just want to be asking a lot of these questions. How does psychology give us great insights into human nature? Why is spirituality valid? And you don't really want to use this kind of critical thinking approach to just tear down perspectives. You want to use it to actually foster understanding of perspective. So you can use critical thinking to just like destroy a perspective in your own mind and then convince yourself that it holds no value. Or you can use critical thinking to actually like search for the wisdom and truth within a perspective, right? And be open. So you want to do this in a very open-minded way, not in a way where you're tearing down perspectives of any kind, really. You really want to integrate a lot of perspectives, like religion, science, spirituality, meditation, psychotherapy, psychology, biology, chemistry, history, physics, etc., music, art, relationships, career, business, philosophy, right? You really want to just integrate a lot of these core ideas. It's going to help you out quite a lot. So moving on is just reflection and self-assessment. You want to actually just kind of be reflecting on what you've learned. You want some time to digest the things that you learn. You need a time to just kind of integrate it and allow it to kind of just become a part of you. Because when you're learning something and you're kind of taking it into your mind, it's becoming a part of you essentially. So identify areas of confusion as well. This goes into reflection and reflection and self-assessment, just noticing what you're kind of confused about. And just because you're confused about it, and just because like you can't really understand it right away, doesn't mean that it's wrong or it's bad or etc. It's like you just kind of want to use that confusion to inquire into it, again, in a very just open way, in a very honest way. So if you're confused about it, right, it's like you just want to kind of be open towards it and inquire into it a little bit deeper. Because I guarantee you there's things that are true that exist that will confuse you, that might not fit well into your mind's current organization. Number 7, I mentioned this briefly earlier, is synthesizing information. Combine ideas from different sources or disciplines to create a more holistic understanding. This idea of holistic understanding is completely needed, especially in the modern world. We're actually at this point at our development as a species where we're able to integrate and synthesize all sorts of different traditions and perspectives. 500 years ago, this wasn't really the case. Nowadays, yes, we have Buddhism and Christianity and Jainism and Islam and Judaism and all the branches of science, right? Like I said earlier, it's like we can connect all these different traditions and all of these forms of information and philosophies, start noticing the commonalities and what's actually true about them. Digging into them, we can challenge our assumptions. We can actually just start to integrate them in a more holistic way, right? And we don't want to like tear down an entire philosophical system. If you have this desire to like completely throw away an entire philosophical system, you're wrong. you're just wrong. There's nuggets of wisdom within Islam or Christianity or science or literally practically every single philosophy. There's nuggets of wisdom in it that are very worth integrating and actually searching for. So synthesizing information is really important. Moving on, pretty counterintuitive, is teaching other people. As you really begin to do this kind of stuff for a very long time, you got to give back to the world, right? You do this kind of work, it's only right. It's only right that you give back, that you also share with other people. This doesn't mean that you have to be a teacher, right? This doesn't mean you have to do what I do. This means that you can just share it with other people, essentially. And this actually helps to really form a deeper understanding of it in your own mind. This actually helps you to really clarify your own understanding, right? It puts you in this position where it almost forces you to clarify your understanding, especially in my own case when I'm working one-to-one with people, right? It's like over time I've had to get even clearer and clearer and clearer and clearer about this kind of stuff. So yeah. Essentially, another important point when it comes to teaching people is using simple language to ensure that you and other people can fully grasp the concept. There's a good Albert Einstein quote, don't quote me exactly, but it's make things simpler, but not any simpler than they have to be, right? So it's like we're boiling it down to essentially a level where we can grasp it, but not any simpler. Because if it's any simpler than it really is, we start to lose the value of it. We're oversimplifying it. It's not true anymore. But if we're, if it's too complicated for no reason, it's not practical. It doesn't work. Number 9 is just embracing mistakes. Embrace that right now in your worldview. There's holes, there's errors, there's blind spots. We all have our blind spots. Some people more than others, but there's just going to be holes, and they're going to be there for the rest of your life. You don't really have to be perfect. You don't want to just strive for perfection. Instead, you just want to use your mistakes as a way to actually foster self-connection and self-compassion for yourself. Just like, I'm going to just make mistakes, and that's actually okay. And you can really just use your mistakes and your misunderstandings essentially to actually identify like gaps and blind spots and then begin to kind of fill those in. So we want to reframe it from like it's bad to it's positive, it's good, it's actually helpful to just make a mistake. This is kind of just how you learn, and it's totally okay. 10 is just questioning the fundamentals of whatever it is that you're actually learning. Essentially, you want to this is like one of the most important points, by the way. You want to deep dive into the principles of what it is that you're learning, since a lot of the core values and principles of the philosophical system, right, of the mental framework, this is what gives rise to a lot of those core things, right? This is what's going to, not core things, let me rephrase that. A lot of those underlying principles are what gives rise to a lot of like the content of that philosophical system, of that kind of mental framework. The core things are more so the principles. I misspoke. So essentially, just noticing a lot of those core principles, right, and then integrating them into your own life, right? What are the core principles of various religions, and then noticing some common aspects, core principles within a lot of spiritual traditions, the core principles within science, the core principles within different dating philosophies, because dating philosophies and dating ideas happen within the context of science, even spirituality, a lot of very good ones within spirituality, the work of David Data, absolutely fantastic, and a lot more that I can't even go into in this video. But essentially, you're just seeking to understand the underlying mechanisms or underlying principles that give rise to this conceptual framework that you're learning from the wisdom that you're trying to take in, right? It's those underlying mechanisms, underlying principles, underlying values. Those are like the foundation, and then everything else gets built on top of it. So that's it for this video. If you're interested in working with me one-to-one, you can apply to do so. Link is in the description. Take it easy.